Welcome to the Simplified Marketing Podcast. Straight talking ideas to grow your business.
Well, hello and welcome to the Simplified Marketing Podcast. My name is John Lawley and I run a web design agency. And as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Georgia from Marshmallow. She is our brand specialist. And the ever young Andrew Black, who helps trades troubleshoot. So this episode is the same. It's a top tips episode that we're trying here at the moment. So we're thinking along the lines of, there's a lot of news coming out of the United States at the moment where people, especially in the higher echelons of business, are planning around the COVID pandemic and lockdown, and actually thinking about what's going to happen if there is a second wave or a third wave. What happens if your business needs to plan ahead for a second wave, which might come towards the end of this year, and a potential third wave, which might start early next year? How do you future-proof your business? How do you move things forward rather than stay in a lockdown situation? How can you actually trade going forwards? So the three of us have all got together to discuss 6 points that we've come up with around this scenario to see if we can help you, give you some insights into how you might be able to future-proof your business. As always, you can watch all the episodes at marketingsimplified.co.uk. So, guys, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, good to be back, John, as always.
Wonderful. Right. Our first point then was thinking about as a business, thinking about your immediate area. There are a lot of people stuck at home. A lot of them still have disposable income. A lot of them are still on furlough and therefore are still receiving some form of income and may not have the same kind of outgoings like travel expenses, such and such kind of going forward. So what kind of offerings could people be offering right now?
Do you know what I love? I've been speaking to a few contacts of mine recently, and I want to give you an example. A wine exporter and importer who only ever dealt with restaurants and bars. So you can imagine that obviously the last few weeks and months have been really, really difficult. And I knew that he was really hesitant to tap into the domestic market because that wasn't his business. But he's tried it and now he's seeing a huge interest, obviously. And I think, John, maybe you may be one of his biggest fans now as well. But
very probably. Everyone
is now like drinking wine at home because they can't go out. And then there's the whole Zoom thing as well. And people are having family parties on Zoom with their wines. And it's completely game changed the industry. And I just think that's a fantastic one for an example of a business and how they've seen people in their immediate region, how they've had to kind of switch and adapt, but it's transformed their business in a whole different dimension. So what like a fantastic thing to have happened just from changing your mindset and opening it up to, do you know what, we need to adapt, we need to look at what's going on right now, and let's see how we can cater for the individuals that are around us and offer them something from our business that is still safe. I just love it, even though I'm not a drinker.
It's good to see as trusted advisors we're recommending alcohol to everybody that listens.
Within the first minute of the show as well, you know.
Totally.
Clearly, if you look closely, everyone's just got a little bit of the shakes. It's filming this reasonably late at night for us. So, yeah. But on the kind of catering theme, obviously with all the pubs and restaurants being closed, there's a couple of sort of bistro pubs and bars and so on not too far from us, and they're doing roast dinner deliveries, and they're also doing like afternoon teas. So where you've still got birthdays and things like that, they are kind of catering because obviously the takeaway places are still open. They're able to operate in a safe environment. So I've seen that switch from local businesses for sure. And I think one other point to make is there's such a bigger, wider spread feeling of community at the moment. I mean, I've even got a community WhatsApp group on our close, which is just a neighbourhood watch close. But on there, you've got like the electricians, and other sort of local trades sort of saying, look, we're not working at the moment. If anyone gets stuck, if anybody needs help, just give us a call, drop us a message if anybody you know is in trouble. And that's a real good way to kind of just let people know, probably your neighbours that might not even know what you do unless your van's sign written, for example. But just let them know that you're here, that you can help and you're in a position and so on. And that's obviously extended to our parents are a little bit older. Do you mind picking something up when you're at the Tesco's or whatever? So that's been a really nice thing coming from the community for a change when it's not.
Yeah, local community. I completely agree. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? If you're in an area and you can't necessarily travel too far, you've now got this local area which you might have kind of ignored for a long time. It's now on your doorstep, and this is now these are people to protect and look after and help. but also to help serve different services to. I love the wine idea because, yes, I have been a customer.
Of course you do.
And also, there's a number of different people. If you kind of scratch the surface, there are more things available than you actually realize. And, being part of networking groups, the three of us know about this. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people who are maybe in the mainstream, who are employed by a larger business, don't necessarily understand that there are still lots of local people out there who are actually specialists in really good things. There's a French wine specialist who lives in the locality in North London. There's an Italian specialist in wine. There are local farms who can deliver milk to your doorstep, old school. Talked about this in a previous episode, but getting actual cow's milk that has been milked just up the road, delivered to your front door fresh on a morning it's still available.
You're seeing that as well, like even the community groups on social media, Facebook, for example, up here in Dunstable, like I'm miles away, like up north.
Outside the M25.
Literally 20 minutes away from where you guys are sat. But you've seen a lot more communication there, a lot more people mainly being friendly, still some bitchy stuff going on. But all of a sudden there are these smaller people trying to sell their bits and pieces online, trying to produce things, trying to sort of market their goods and so on. And you're finding that small family businesses are starting to come to the forefront and use the social media, use those community groups to start kind of selling. And I think people are encouraging that and people want to buy locally. Although don't get me wrong, the supermarkets are doing a fantastic job. We're all feeling for the small businesses at the moment. And if there's anything we can do to help and support, then it's great to see them kind of push to the forefront and get that voice.
Maybe for any businesses, a good tip would be like to sit and sometimes you forget, right? Like I know like John and I, for example, we offer heaps and heaps of services to our clients. Like there's such a different array of stuff that sometimes we forget little elements or maybe overlook certain parts of our business that might be really fundamental for people right now. So maybe one idea is for people just to sit one evening with their glass of wine or their cup of green tea, if you're me, and just list down everything you can do in your business and then have a look at it, like put it away for a day, then come back to it the next day with the mindset of, right, what here could really benefit by either bringing people back together, I could do without going near anybody so I can feel safe from the whole social distancing element. And then with those areas of the business, right, let's start promoting those parts and getting it out there on social, putting it on my website and promoting those parts so that you can still be at the forefront of the community's mind because you're helping them with what they need rather than what you're trying just to sell. So
that's a brilliant point. That actually leads on to the second point that I'd put down. So once you've got your list and once you've decided what the services are that you can offer and start offering to people in your locality and close by, how do you then contact them and actually get the message out? Because that's the really important part. You've got the service. How do you now speak to your next door neighbor and the rest of your immediate neighbors to actually let them know what you can do?
Well, I'll tell you what, let me just twist that question around a little bit because I think us being in the situation we're in, all of a sudden people that haven't been brave enough to do Facebook Lives are all of a sudden doing that. You've got online webinars left, right and centre. We've had, again, going back to the community, a personal trainer doing a Zoom session for everyone in the street if needed. So let me put it to you guys. Obviously, there's a number of ways. What do you guys think is the most effective way for businesses to get their message across?
I think that one comes down to, again, it's like when you're starting a brand from scratch, who's the ideal client? Who are you trying to help? And how do they like to receive their communication? Because is it worth creating an app if your target audience is the 75 plus age group? Probably not, I'd imagine. But, you need to look at how would you get to those people? Maybe it would be their children who are in their 40s that are on the Facebook group. So maybe I need to be present there. Maybe you've got an email list and you want to touch base with old clients and let them know that you're focusing on certain services that might be of value to them right now. I always come back to my list. I'm such a list person. I come back to my list of all the different ways that you can communicate with people and look at who are you trying to help right now and where are they and how do they receive their information? That's where we need to put your focus. And that's going to be different for every single business.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's the fundamental, I think. That's definitely with anything you're starting out. What Georgia has just said is actually instrumental in it, because I think a lot of people made the mistake of just going out and going, oh, I'm going to do email marketing or I'm going to do this and that. But if you've not thought through how that person likes to be spoken to and how they like to receive that information, then you've not got a chance and you're probably going to miss because you're just guessing. So once you've done that exercise with someone like Georgia to actually decide who those people are, I think there's an array of different ways. And for different businesses, they work in different ways. And for different age ranges, they work in different ways. But think about the fact that a lot of marketing services are still open for business because people need to get messages out. So I am constantly contacted by about 30,000 printers every single day trying to sell their wares. Printing shops and printing businesses are still open because for the most part, they're in a warehouse somewhere and one person can operate 50,000 machines and can print off 100,000 flyers within a few hours. And then someone else then wraps them all up and then sticks them in the post. Someone else then comes and delivers them. So it's all contactless all the way through. So you could, as well, in a way, start looking at something like direct mail, where you just send off a design you've got ready, and that could be a letter, it could be a brochure, it could be anything like that. Someone remotely prints it for you. Someone then uploads your address list, and then someone else then will stick those in the post, and then they're automatically delivered by the postman or DHL or Hermes or whoever directly to the front door and letterbox of your target audience. And even I think like I've tried it with various different customers, but the Royal Mail have some form of offer on where they'll deliver 8,000 pieces of mail for 500 quid to a specific postcode. So you could say, this is my postcode. Someone's printed 8,000 flyers or 8,000 catalogs, 500 quid, will deliver those. And you don't have to deliver them all at the same time. It could be 3,000 one week, 3,000 the next, 3,000 the third week. So you've got, you're hitting people every couple of weeks with a slightly different message where it's coming from you. So that's one kind of very cost-effective method, which you can do from your own home, and you don't actually have to be involved in, really. You just
but not only, John, is that cost-effective. I mean, at the moment where the vast majority of people do have a little bit more time in their day, or are working from home, or are actually at home, probably I'll take it a bit longer to actually have a look at the post that comes through the door rather than just throwing it straight into the junk. So I think that's really important. That's a real good thing to consider. I mean, have you guys noticed any change or any difference in the cost of Facebook ads or Google ads at all?
Yes. Now, this is quite an interesting one from speaking to various different people who are doing Google ads, also running things like Facebook ads myself. So generally speaking, I think if you are offering some form of online service or like a download or an online course or something like that, I think that people are trying to educate themselves. So I think that it seems to be easier to get people to have a look and view that proposition online and sign up for an online course. But if it's something which is more trades-based, I mean, I'd use this example at the moment because this is one thing I'm finding a little bit tricky at the moment: air conditioning. Obviously, not everyone has the money to install air conditioning at the moment. It's a reasonably costly, endeavor. But there was a campaign I ran for one particular air conditioning company last year, and it just flew out there. The cost per click was really quite small. The engagement rate was huge, and they were getting a really good return on their investment. The similar campaign this year, just running through, yes, we are available, yes, we can do this, and yes, we can do that. We can do it all safely and engaged. The cost is cheaper because there aren't as many people advertising. So Facebook and Google want more customers and therefore are making it cheaper because there isn't as much competition going on. But the engagement rates and the click-through rates are a lot smaller in comparison. Right. So you're getting less people engaged with that, but at the same time, it's costing you less to do. But if you think about the return on investment, it's still worth it. You're just not making as much, I think, is the potential outcome. I don't know if you found anything different, Georgia.
Well, I'm certainly not an expert on the ad side of things on social. I mean, mine's more the brand. But interestingly, the last couple of weeks, I actually was doing some ads for myself. And I'd created an opt-in for painters and decorators specifically. And it worked phenomenally well. Honestly, I got my email was pinging off all day long that I had new people opting in. And I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. This was 2 weeks ago. So this is when I was on lockdown. Last week, I put through a similar ad, Facebook ad, and it was for an opt-in for plumbers specifically. And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get the same response. Interestingly, I did not. And I have a feeling it's because then lockdown had been announced. I don't know. I just found this all very coincidental that the results were completely skew-whiff, even though there was a similar kind of opt-in, there was a similar kind of trail that the trades would go down sort of funneling through. And then I sort of thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. I mean, I've always been of the school that with the ads and things, speak to the experts for that stuff, because I think that's a whole completely different ballgame to the branding element, which is obviously what I do. But I find the whole thing fascinating, and it is, you have to test things out. You can't just think mentally, I'm just going to throw this money at Facebook ads and it's going to guarantee me this and this. You need to work with an expert like yourself, like SEO companies as well, or Facebook ad companies that can do all the testing, and they can split test to see, right, what has worked on this, what has worked on this part as well, what didn't work, trial and error. And I think that's where people go a bit wrong with Facebook ads. They just think they put some money behind something and not really knowing what they're doing, they're just going to get a massive return when they don't know how it works behind the scenes.
Yeah, that is a really good point, actually. You've got to test things out. Never use the boost option on something like Facebook.
God, yeah.
or Instagram. You might as well just get a 20 quid note and just burn it.
Rip it, yeah. People, I always say to people, they see that blue button, don't they? But what we have to remember is Facebook's a business. They're encouraging us to want to spend money with them. And it's not to say that Facebook ads don't work, because they can be so powerful. And I've certainly seen it for myself. But when you don't know what you're doing and you just see boost post for £20 and you think, oh, okay, like as a tradesman might see that and get excited by it, which using trade as an example, which I keep hearing my guys doing, they're throwing £20 left, right and centre, and they're thinking, oh, this is great. Loads of people have seen this post that was misspelt, that had no call to action, that had a dodgy image, and then you wonder why you had no results. There's a lot more that goes in to all these ads rather than just the putting money on. What are you offering? How are you positioning yourself? How are you targeting it to the ideal audience that you want? And I guess people are just a bit uneducated to that. So they need our help in guiding them a bit, really.
It's also worth kind of saying, with all this going on, there's still opportunity, and there's good opportunity and bad opportunity. And I think I caught up with John earlier on, and I was just sort of saying there's a massive demand at the moment for home gym equipment. And if you go online and you look at things like eBay and so on, the prices are ridiculous, like 5 or 6 times the usual amount. Wow. So there's been a few Facebook ads that have popped up selling gym equipment. Just want to make sure people double check the comments, double check the business, click on the actual website, click on all the links, and just do your due diligence a little bit, because there seems to be, with this opportunity, a lot of scam sites, a lot of scam companies jumping up, and I'm sure Facebook does do a level of sort of its own due diligence and checks. But looking at it, if a deal is too good to be true, it normally is. And there's been at least 3 different companies I've seen that there's no substance or anything behind them.
Yeah, I've seen that. So there's another one that's going around at the moment for the black AirPods, the earbuds. So someone in China has managed to rip off Apple's design for AirPods, made them black, and say that they're exactly the same, but a third of the price. Well, I very much doubt that they will be as good. You can actually get those things delivered, apparently, but the sound quality is absolutely naff, and they don't really connect to your phone as they should. So, if you are going to pay less, I think, you're absolutely right. Check everything out. I think clothing retailers, because it's very easy to set up and just put images of different clothing online. Those are the biggest scams, I think, at the moment.
Oh, my God, I've been ripped off £600 for when I was a maid of honour. I think it came through a Facebook thing. I clicked through to the site and I bought these dresses for my sister's wedding. I never saw that money again, and I cannot tell you the things that arrived at my house. I could not even call them dresses. They should have just been rags of some sort. Awful. And I chased them up, and there's some company in China, even though it was branded up to look like a UK company. And I got completely stung. So,
well, that is another point, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people, those scam ones are obviously doing a very good job with the branding. Whereas I think people who are just starting up and figuring things out and testing things out on things like Facebook, email marketing, whatever, are they actually, they are legitimate companies and they're local, but are they actually investing the right amount of time and effort in their own branding and their own website? Well,
that's where things like reviews, I guess, come down and are really important, where you can see faces of people, you can click on profiles, maybe you can see where they're based as well. I know there's a lot of for the hacking and spammy companies that really put the time and effort in to try and fake all of that. I guess that's kind of the next level, and there will be the odd occasion where people will get burnt like I did. And I do this for a living, but everything I was seeing looked really legitimate. And I've spotted so many spammy things come through my inbox in the past. The best one I ever saw was an Apple one. Literally, the email looked completely like an Apple newsletter, and I spotted something at the bottom of the email that I queried, and it went straight to the apple.com page. So again, you think it was all legitimate, but there was one extra link, and I thought, let me have a look at this, and it was something dodgy, and I immediately knew and sent it to everybody. So this looks so perfect, but I spotted one thing, and this is a complete hoax. So try to send everyone a warning as well. So you've got to be so careful.
Andrew, going back to your original question, I think you've got to, in a way, figure out who this audience is, how they consume different media. But I think, like Georgia says, I think you've definitely got to test things out. So is direct mail going to be a good one? Because, you send something shiny through the door, people have got more time, like you say, to have a look at it. Things like Facebook Live. Georgia is the expert on that in our group here. Tricks of the trade is going really well. And, try these things out. I've seen a lot of people start Instagram accounts, just trying things out. And getting to know how to use those different things. I had a Zoom call earlier today with some clients who were in their 70s who managed to figure out how to use Zoom correctly. And they put books underneath the laptop and everything. They were properly positioned. I was like, whoa, just a minute. How have you come across all this stuff? Oh, we've just been reading up online, they said. And we've been, wanted to make ourselves look good. And they obviously had the bookshelves in the background with lots of leather-bound books.
Oh,
and their apartment was smelling of rich mahogany. Don't ask me how I know that, but
Well, Andrew mentioned earlier in point one about community, and that is really important, and especially through social media at the minute, the amount of interaction and engagement I'm seeing through community groups and people wanting to help each other as well, and people who don't even know each other going out of their way when they're putting a post to get something to somebody else. To a contact of mine, she was sadly burying her grandmother next week, and they wanted to get her favourite drink that was quite a rare Greek alcohol, and she put out on the post on a local group, would anyone happen to have a bottle of this, just so we can sort of cheer my nan next week at the funeral? And someone did, and she didn't meet them, but she went and took a photo outside the front door from a few meters away. Thank you so much to this lady that had this bottle, and now we can give my nan that send off that we'd hoped for. I mean, how amazing is that? That's and all brilliant. Of this is going on the community groups with people that are complete strangers but wanting to help each other because of the community spirit right now. So I just think that's incredible.
How much then? So we've got to the point of putting our list together and thinking about who we can now, or who we can offer a service to. We've thought about what kind of services we can now offer. We've thought about how we're going to deliver that service. But what about the key other things? So the messaging point of this. I mean, Andrew, how au fait do you think trades are with actually putting a coherent message together about what they're offering and how to charge for it as well?
I think with a lot of trades, the difficulty is there's this almost excitement once we've gone past or beyond the point of just word of mouth referrals, and now we're going to start doing some marketing. So as we mentioned in previous points, getting the brand looking special, looking good, looking how it should, targeting our market. But then what happens is we just list absolutely every single thing that we do, as opposed to, okay, there's our audience, let's pick one. Let's pick the thing that is the 80% of our services that brings in the kind of high profit margin. That's what we're looking to do. So for example, in our game, it would be boiler servicing. Boiler servicing is the key one. It's easy to market. Everybody should have it done in terms of whether it be a legal requirement or the manufacturer's recommendations. It's safety for your home. It helps you save bills. You should always speak to your gas safe registered engineer in your local area to have that done. What that can lead on to in time is either replacement boiler, replacement radiators, just as the system ages. But if I send a leaflet out, whether it be direct mail, Facebook Live, however I'm going to market myself, and just list everything. I mean, the networking groups that we go to, we talk about being specific. And obviously, if we're not specific with who we're targeting and the type of service we're offering, we're just going to lose that person. If I talk about passionately, hopefully, one specific service, i.e. boiler servicing, that person will think about, oh no, it's okay, I had it done last week, or actually, have I booked that in with my engineer, or have I still got a monthly care plan, or how am I looking after that part of the house? So I think that's kind of where trades often fall down. They often try and list absolutely every single thing that you do all in one go and believe that content is what it's all about. When, as we know from presentation skills, it's all about the tonality of the delivery and, as I say, being specific.
Well, yeah, I guess with trades, we know that the biggest challenge you guys face is the whole know, like, trust factor, right? Like there's trying to defeat that stereotype of cowboy tradesman that still lingers around, and the white van man, and turning up when you want and not finishing the job and disappearing and trying to chase you on the phone and all these kind of things. And that's just Andrew. That's not even totally
that was
joking.
2008 Andrew.
So you guys have a lot of work before we've even picked up the phone to try and eliminate those challenges for us, right? And especially for the ladies, if we live alone as well, we're letting in tradesmen into our homes. That's a huge thing. We're letting in a strange male into our premises when we're by ourselves. It's a concern, right? So you've got a lot of challenges to face before we even pick up the phone. And that's where brand is super, super helpful, because if on your Facebook, if on your landing page, if on your website, on your van, on your clothing, even how you pick up and answer the phone, everything for us is tick, 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 tick. Like that then encourages us to want to use you, to choose you above your competitors, and in a lot of cases to pay a premium because we feel we're investing in someone that's trustworthy, that's not going to rob us, that's not going to be rude to us, that's not going to do half a job and disappear. It's creating that whole experience almost before it's happened. And there's so many ways that you do that in your brand. And I know John has had super success, not only in websites, but specifically landing pages, because Andrew was saying, some of the tradespeople, they just think list absolutely everything and then put all this out there and then people will come to us. But we know by honing in on a niche or a specific area of our business and proving ourselves as the expert in that is how we really grow. I've seen some of the work that John's been doing with landing pages, not just for trades, but for other companies as well. And he's taking the USP or the niche of a business and creating pages focused on that. And I know you said you've had some great results off the back of that. And I'd highly recommend businesses to think about that as a way of pushing a certain element of their business forward.
Thank you very much for that shameless plug. That was brilliant.
You are
Thank you.
Absolutely welcome.
But yes, obviously I completely agree. It's that one thing, as you both said, that one key point. This is what pulls people in, and then afterwards you build a relationship, and it allows you then to start saying, "Well, we also do this, we also do this, we also do this." And you keep those touches. It's an opportunity then to talk to them, that customer, for a longer period of time, because you're talking about all the rest of your services. But that one thing that you've helped them with, which might have been a relatively small job to do or a small amount of money, that's helped build the trust, and that brought people in. That's how that goes back to my first step into networking. I earned my first amount of money in networking before even joining. The first meeting that I ever went to, when I was just finding out more about networking, someone came across and said, "I heard your speech. You were talking about emails. Can you help me with this?" It's only a small thing, but yeah, of course, absolutely, brilliant. And that was a transaction which helped pay for my first membership fee. And then take it on, that small thing that goes through, everyone then trusts you to have delivered that. Great, I'm going to trust you with something bigger now. Let's keep in touch. Let's keep talking. As long as you continue the conversation with your client and customer, you can then start talking about other things.
That's what it is. If it's something that is relatively low cost, easy to deliver, something that you're really good at, then just be specific with it. And you guys will know if you're delivering the message correctly, and if the branding's all tied up, and your personality comes across either in the delivery of that material, in the online video, however you're doing it, people have an emotional response to it. Like it or not, how many times do we hear, I just got a funny feeling about that person, I just didn't like them, even if they've never met them. So your emotions don't kind of lie to you. So if all that is conveyed correctly in the messaging or in the brand itself, or the way the message comes across in the method, then you're already halfway there. And as you mentioned, Georgia, you then don't mind paying a premium for it.
Well, because you don't, there's so many people, I guess a lot of people do think, people just want the cheapest of everything, right? But look at the people that are, how many thousands I've invested in Apple machinery, people that buy Chanel handbags, Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Why are they buying this stuff? Well, okay, that's great if they can afford them, but it's because they see the value in it. They see the value, and it's not just, I want the cheapest. I want what's going to work for me. Like the Apple machinery, I could buy machinery that's so much cheaper and could run all the design softwares that I need. But I know that this is going to work the fastest for me. I know that this is going to enhance the design skills that I already have and make my product much better. So I invest and spend a premium on my machinery because I know, I see its value, and I know that it's going to take me to where I want to be. And it's the same with clients when they're invested in us as businesses. If we can prove our value, and I know a lot of businesses get really scared when you say niche or specialize in something, because then they think, but then I'm shutting out all the other areas of my business that I want to do as well. But if you've got, like you said, Andrew, the profitable parts of your business that you love doing, you love a specific client type, if you could have 1,000 of those jobs in a year, wouldn't you be happy to do 1,000 of those over and over again, enjoy them, earn the money you want, then trying to do all the other things because you think that's how you're going to grow your business? I mean, my mindset
What it
changed
does
on that a
allow
few
is
years
if
ago.
you get really good at doing that one thing, it allows you to systemize and it allows you to
Absolutely.
grow the business as well.
Mhm.
Georgia, what was that list of products you just said? It was Apple,
Apple, Chanel, Ferrari. I was just reeling off all the high quality stuff that I know.
Well, for anyone listening who wants to take Georgia out on a date,
there's my list of stuff that you need to set up with.
There you go. You see, that's what you need to
get
invest
you on the
in.
podcast anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah. At least 2 Ferraris or 2 Jags minimum.
Sure.
So, well, actually, that kind of brings us on nicely to one of my next points, which was all about your business model and pricing. Because obviously that is now going to have to change quite a lot. You're offering a different service, you've got different customers and clientele, and you're looking for them in different places. So your cost, your prices, your set prices, etc. I think this is more of a question for Andrew to start talking through now about the actual gubbins of all of that within your business.
Well, first of all, it's a good opportunity for everyone, hopefully, to reassess what's going on and therefore look at the model and what's going on. For the larger companies, I'm sure they've got all the relevant grants, loans, tax breaks, rent breaks, mortgage breaks, et cetera, that they can do. But going forward, I mean, it's so difficult to plan for this type of stuff. And obviously, what we're trying to do today is talk about the different ways that we can protect ourselves going forward. So looking at the model, if you're not furloughed, but you've got 5 or 6 of the members of your staff that are furloughed, and somehow you're still managing to run a large part of that business, then it surely points out that there's productivity issues within your staff members. And if that's the case, it is time for a change. It is time to look at where you can cut certain elements of processes, where you can not necessarily cut staff, but maybe take the staff and give them a different role or responsibility within the business. We mentioned niching. Could that one member of staff now focus on that area of the business and really push the new product or new service? So it's about now evaluating the different lines, the different products, the different services, the different profit margins you get from those. But probably more importantly than any of that, we've all been caught short a little bit. How can you lower your expenses every month? Do you really need the 5 vans? Could you have 4? Do you really need that telephone system? Do you really need the all singing, all dancing mobile? Do you even need premises? I mean, look, what we've proved and demonstrated is the whole world, including 70-year-olds, can now get online. You know, sometimes it's necessary to go onto site. Sometimes it will be necessary to go to networking meetings. But for the large part, even things of carbon emissions, let alone the time that we saved on going to all these appointments, there's so many costs that can be saved. So I would start by looking at your forecast and how it's been. Yes, there's less money coming in, but there should be a hell of a lot less money going out. And going forward, is this new model, this new structure, something you can maintain, having had now tidied up your brand, tidied up your messaging, and really looked at a proper marketing plan and new business plan for those products and services moving forward?
I'd love to know what your thoughts are, Andrew, because I see it in part sometimes when I'm scrolling on social. But I guess with everything that has been going on, there's been a lot of businesses that have been panicking and thinking that by slashing prices to get customers in the short term, I'd just love to know your thoughts on that. Is that something you'd advise? Like, is that something that people should be reviewing? Because maybe that could affect their brand stuff as well from a business perspective, not a design one.
I think, to be honest with you, it's desperate times for a lot of people, and there's certain trades that are really struggling. I know a couple of guys, pest controllers, painter decorators, that have actually helped the NHS out and taken on sort of pay-as-you-go jobs, ambulance driving and so on and so forth. There's kind of 2 sides of this. It's made them really evaluate their entire outlook, their life, and what they're going to do when things change. Are they going to go back to their business? Are they going to do it 50-50? But everybody that I've spoken to that hasn't spoken to me about reducing their prices or cutting their prices, and I certainly haven't recommended it. I just feel that it damages people's brand, their integrity in some ways, because we're all struggling. But if you're giving me half price something, then I can tell you're struggling, which is as a human being, as somebody personal that I know, is terrible, and I really want to help. But if a business business does that, then I'm going to capitalize. So if you're now offering me 50% off, give me 75% off. You know, I would just kind of push it and push it and push it. And unfortunately, that's going to leave these other individuals, if they're doing that, half price boiler servicing, half price gardening, anything like that. If you're in that position and that person's that desperate, unfortunately, as a consumer, I'd want to take that offer. But I would strongly not recommend that. Even from a community perspective, if one person does that, it can then have an effect on the other people because they'll feel like they need to. It gives the consumer a little bit of negotiating power because they said, oh, the company down the road is doing it for this price. Just stay firm. You know what you're about. You know what your values are. You know what your goals are. You know what you're trying to achieve. And with all the reductions and cuts that you probably can make, cutting your prices is the last thing that you want to do.
I would completely agree with that. I think that why would you? It's not a race to the bottom at the moment. We're still all, we're still good at what we do. The things that we're doing have all been priced accordingly. So why are we giving things away cheaper? Why should anyone be expected to do that and give it away cheaper? It's not like people have had a real, it's not like a lot or most people have had a real-time pay cut. The people who still want your services and can still afford to pay for them in some shape or form, if they have a good business model and they're still working and are worthwhile working with. I think that's one of the major keys to that.
But I think it must be the business owners that are making that decision. Right, panic, let's reduce our prices. Because from all the businesses that I speak to that are kind of giving my clients work and giving me work on the tool side of things, nobody's asking me to reduce my prices. There's no pressure whatsoever. Nobody's even asked to change payment terms for me, which I know is something we mentioned in a previous episode. But as it stands, unless that communication is weighing down heavily on you, I said, pick up the phone to one of us guys if you need a little bit of reassurance about this type of stuff. But cutting your prices should be the absolute last thing that you do.
That's the answer I wanted to hear.
Have you felt, I don't know how you guys feel, but from various different groups of different business owners that I've spoken to, there seems to be almost 3 groups of people now that kind of falling into. The first one are larger businesses who are kind of, getting on. We're good businesses. We still have the work coming in. So we're just getting on with it, basically. But, making the appropriate changes with social distancing, but still doing work, still out there, still being profitable, etc. In fact, probably more profitable if we've cut a few of our base costs out, like Andrew suggested. Then there seems to be a second group of people who never really had a marketing plan or an action plan or goals or targets, were just there to, were good at what they do, very likely, but just never thought above getting the next job. And we're just there and things thankfully came in and we're just getting by, never thought about anything. They're the ones who are really worried. They're the ones who are hiding away. They're the ones who are not necessarily doing too much. And then there seems to be a third group of people who are, taking late nights and creating podcasts, thinking of new ideas, spreading the love, sharing the knowledge.
Love those people.
And why?
I think when you refer to some of the smaller businesses or people that aren't necessarily kind of in line with their own vision or unaware that they have a vision of where they want their company to go, they get caught up with the urgent, which is whatever's immediate and is whatever the most noisy thing is. Now, all of that stuff has subsided because the workflow slowed. And instead of thinking, wow, here's an opportunity to deal with the important, they've just focused on the fact that there's nothing urgent to deal with. Now, that's a real problem. And this is where these guys, if you're aware of these people, try and reach out to them, calm them down, and get them to listen back to some of these podcasts, for argument's sake, and just see how they can start structuring and working on the things that are important in their business. I think when all this happened, however long ago, it was 5, 6 weeks, 6 years ago. Doesn't it feel like we're in a time warp at the moment?
Feels like it.
The emotional shock of it all, I think, knocked everyone for a good couple of weeks. And as they have seen the money come in from the government, and as they have been able to make those savings, make those cuts, and get everything in line, and also gain maybe a new perspective. I spoke to a glazing company. He's spending more time with his family. And he's like, I don't even know if I want to go back to 60 or 70 hour weeks. And that's where there is some positive that comes out of this type of stuff. So yeah, I'm hearing exactly what you've described there, John. Everyone's kind of a bit of a mash of it all, but I think everyone's slowly getting past that emotional shock and is starting to formulate plans. Listen, there's going to be people that are always give them a global pandemic, they'll still always do what they did. Give them a recession or a depression, they'll still always do what they did. You can't help those guys. You just got to kind of leave them.
And it's never too late to plan, really, is it? I mean, even at the stage we're at now, where a business may have been struggling the last few months, like just by planning ahead, I'm sure as a coach as well, even just for a month, you can probably, like, you'll start reaping small rewards a month or two after that, right? Just from putting a few new things in place, making sure that you're working with a coach that's making sure you're not making big mistakes, because often is the case that they're just doing the complete wrong thing rather than slowly stepping stones in the right direction, right?
Well, or they're doing the things that they know how to do rather than the things that they don't know or they don't want to or they're scared of. And it's also, I suppose, the biggest thing is they're completely unaware of what they don't know. I know that sounds like a bit of a tongue twister, but you can only know what you know. But I take it back a few steps, is because for the guys that aren't working at all, try and establish some sort of routine. Because if you were getting up at 5, those guys are getting up at 8, 9, 10 now. And, you know, we've all had a couple of weeks of that. But if you want to kind of maintain or start planning the future for your business, let's start getting some sort of routine back for our own personal selves. And whether that's wake up at a normal time, don't go to bed too late, do your exercise, do family time, do your homeschooling if you've got kids, or don't. Maybe that's the trick is right there. Do a bit of homeschooling for yourself, bit of personal development, bit of business development, and then sit down with a cup of coffee. And literally, as you said, Georgia, you start planning. So what happens when we come out of all this? We've discussed today, who's my target market? What's my branding look like? How am I communicating with our customers? Those are all things that I guarantee you, I'd say 80% of businesses don't ask themselves that question, or the smaller businesses that we work with don't ask themselves that question until we ask them in one of our kind of assessments with them.
It's weird, isn't it? Because I know personally that my business operates much better by taking Andrew's advice, cutting out all the unwanted costs, slimming things down, seeing where you can make savings, seeing where you can create maybe direct debit models. You've got regular income, but also got one-off payments and things like that. And I know that all my marketing efforts work so much better if I have an expert like Georgia who has managed to put all the ideal client and everything in place, and the branding looks amazing, and all those touch points look absolutely fantastic. And I also know as well that companies like Amazon, who have got all of this completely right, and it's the one thing that everyone has definitely depended on, having home deliveries during anything like this, and now making $33 million every single second. It's those companies, aren't they, who have almost like seen this and seen what the future could be, who are now actually capitalizing, and it's actually this rush to actually do better. Whereas the people who hadn't necessarily thought and haven't got online and haven't built that infrastructure, who have in a way kind of been quiet, locked everything down, hidden away from it, but are now having to emerge and do something.
Can we just give 3.5 seconds for Amazon, please? Right, there's 100 million. There you go. You'd love to see it just sort of stack up, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I guess for the businesses that have never kind of looked for help outside of themselves, it's overwhelming. They think, oh my God, I need to talk to someone about my website. I need to talk to someone about my brand. I need to talk to a coach. I need to talk to a printer. I need to talk to a sign maker. And then that can be a reason why they don't. But I guess maybe one small bit of advice would be start one conversation. And often I do feel it should be with a coach, because that's a great place to start. Like you just said, slimming down the outgoings. Like, what an amazing thing to be able to save some money just from cutting out a few things and spending half an hour with a coach that can sit and say, do you really need this? What's this about? What's this about? Because you don't give yourself that time to do it throughout the year. Start one conversation and move in small steps. Because I just think people just get too overwhelmed, because there's so many of us as experts that can help in so many ways. And then they just completely close the door. So maybe part of that structure, for example, like Andrew was saying, those of our trades that might not be getting up at 5 a.m. so much and not having a planned structure throughout the day, maybe if they can break their day down into 1 hour intervals, 1 hour of the exercises, 1 hour play the kids, 1 hour do this. Maybe one of those hours could be make a call once a week to an expert. pick up the phone and just call a business coach and just find out what, how could you help me? A 15-minute chat, I'm sure is, you'd be at the end of the phone, Andrew, for that, to see if you can help that person and get a ball rolling. That might not be the right match, but you've had a conversation and your mind has been opened a little bit more to what opportunities could be in front of you.
I think that's what's key. As you say, it is so overwhelming and there's so much information out there. But what you kind of said at the end is absolutely right, if they're a match. And it's a case of, because there's so much choice out there, it's about matching personality and who you kind of on the right frequency with. So everyone I know, we offer so many tools on the website. We offer free conversations, free calls, free discovery calls with each of us or all of us, just to kind of see where you're at. So as you said, if you're sat at home, just get in touch, complete the form, and we can kind of guide you through some easy stuff. And if we can take it further, we take it further. And if we don't, we don't. But at least you've kind of done something proactive for yourself and for your business. Okay, well, you can find out more about Andrew at heroesonhand.co.uk. You can find out more about Georgia at marshmallowdesign.co.uk. And you can find out more about me at johnlawley.co.uk. So thank you very much for watching or listening. If you're listening on iTunes, please don't forget to leave us a review. It's wonderful to know what you think of the show. And you can find out more all about the show at marketingsimplified.co.uk. So stay happy, stay thoughtful, stay exercising, stay in that routine, and we'll see you next time.
That's all for this time, but don't worry, we'll be back with more soon. Stay tuned for new episodes at marketingsimplified.co.uk.